crazy mother.
What's going on, everyone? Nicholas Natt, and you are tuned into the Nat Fitness Method. As you know, this platform is designed to help you move from wherever you are to wherever you want to go in terms of your health, your self-development, and your life goals. And so my goal with this show and company are to bring you the ideas, strategies, and stories that will ultimately help you connect and move from point A to point B with whatever you're doing. So I'm really excited to introduce my guest. I've had the privilege of knowing this gentleman for a long time, and he is definitely one of the most inspirational and the most kind-hearted individuals. He's a pure example. You would know that by his story about the success he's been able to create and building a large team, working with his wife full-time in network marketing, being an incredible father to a young man, growing young boy, and also to being a leader in the community, not just here in the state of Colorado, but all over the nation. Having said that, he is a pure example of somebody who can go through and lose a connection with the process in your head that ultimately inspires you and go through the tumble dry that we all go through and the adversity and the traumas that come with it, and still find your way back on course and attain everything you wanted to achieve and more. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce my guest, the Thiago Harvey. Thiago, thanks for coming in, buddy.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor that you asked me to speak on this podcast, and I'm excited to just talk with you, share a little bit, and hopefully make a difference for whoever's watching.
Absolutely, man. Well, it was pretty easy to select. I mean, obviously, if you're watching this, you know the types of guests that we bring on. And if this is your first time joining, then this will be an excellent stature and statue for what kind of individual we want to bring on. And so, you know, Thiago, I look at your life from a very bird's eye view through media, through all these things. And although those are still only narrow lenses, it's very easy for someone to go on your media and get a very an interrupted feeling. What I mean by that is it's not typical media where people go on and it's a fashion show or it's glam. You share real information. And I feel like people can get a chance to connect either with a video or a content and almost feel what you're saying, whether they want to or they don't. And it's just because you have this tendency to come across really genuine, really authentic. And when we hear about your success, it's not the appearance of coming across genuine or authentic. It's just because you're actually that kind of guy. So, you know, man, I commend you for it. I wanted to open up and let everyone know a little bit about what you do and the business you've been able to build with your team, as well as with your wife, and what that's like working with your life partner.
Man, I appreciate the kind words. You know, being authentic and vulnerable on social media is fun and it's challenging. And that's one thing that, you know, we strive to be as real as possible. So as much as, you know, you're going to see the positivity and the good stuff, right? Like we had a miscarriage last year and we were very public about that. And that's just being real, right? Like it's not always sunshine and rainbows. Life is going to constantly be bringing something at you. And it's not, you know, how you, or it's not the circumstances that you're in, but how you respond, right? That really defines a champion. And so appreciate the kind words. You know, working with my wife is incredible, and being fully transparent, it's got its own challenges because I would say we are two alpha personalities, right? So my wife, I owe her everything. Like she has changed the course of my life in countless ways. And I always say that she's the visionary. She's the rock of this family. She's the one who inspires me to be the best that I can be. And I'm so grateful for that. And with that, it does come with challenges. So working with your wife, working with my best friend, working with, you know, my other business partner, what I love about it is that we're real honest, right? And we have a lot of conversations. We communicate a lot because at the end of the day, I want to make sure that even if we're not on the exact same page, we're in the same book. And that means as we're growing together, not only individually in our own careers, but as a team, that's how we see ourselves. We're a team, our family is. We want to make sure that as we're evolving, we're constantly having these conversations to make sure that, hey, look, this has changed. This has changed. Now I feel this way. Now you feel that way. Like, what's going on over there? And if we're not in constant communication, talking about how we feel and really sharing, like, this is what's here for me and this is what I'm committed to. Like, we always come back to what we're committed to, because at the end of the day, if you're ever in a fight with your spouse, like, things get said that you don't mean, emotions run high, right? And our brain is designed to where blood flow flows into the lizard part of our brain, the fight or flight part of our brain, and it can take control of us. I mean, that's why there's things called crimes of passion, right? Like, people just act out of character. And one of the things that we always do is we reground ourselves and we ask, hey, what are you committed to? Here's what I'm really committed to. And in doing that, we're able to really have an amazing business partnership. We've been able to build a team over the last almost 5.5 years, probably 99% online. Thousands of customers and team members, and we've been able to do it all on social media. So we've partnered with an amazing company that formulated products that we were actually considering making ourselves, but we didn't have to. And we're so proud of this company and the products that they had. And we're grateful that we didn't have to actually do that. I used to own a brick and mortar supplement shop, kind of like a GNC. And at one point, it felt more like a toxic job than it felt like running my own business. And it got to the point where I ended up paying $30,000 in attorney's fees and litigation to just break my franchise agreement, close the doors, and walk away. Right. And it was an expensive lesson, but I got so much from that adversity. I got so much from that experience that I learned and was able to take into the business that we have now. And it's really shaped me, I'd say, as a leader. It's shaped me as somebody who, has compassion and empathy for the person who shows up to work and just doesn't want to be there, but is doing what they have to because they think they have to, make money and provide for their family. Like, I resonate with that. I was in a position kind of like that. I had to pay bills, even though I hated showing up. And I can also really relate to the business owner who, it looks glamorous on the outside, right? It looks like we've got it made, right? I've got this shop and, I'm helping people and I love a lot of what I did. But at the same time, there were so many challenges that people aren't aware of, whether it's the overhead, managing inventory. If things went wrong, that's my back, right? Like, there's nobody coming in to save me. So, if employees don't show up, I'm showing up on shifts that aren't mine. I'm showing up and working holidays. So it really took me out of, one of the most important things that I love, that I crave and I need in my life, and that's a lifestyle of freedom. It took me away from that. And I'm grateful that 5.5 years ago, my wife had the vision. My wife was more open-minded than I was, because truthfully, I was skeptical, but she saw so much potential, not only in the company that we're with, but the people who introduced it to us, to where she said yes before I said yes. But I quickly came around because, if you're married and, your wife is super hot and she's super smart and, she sees things that you can't see, eventually you come around and you figure things out. And that's what happened with me. I'm just grateful we've been able to be in this business for as long as we have, to create the team that we have. We really work with some amazing people, a lot of fitness professionals, people who, like me, I wanted to monetize my passion for fitness. I'm like, man, I love being in the gym. I love working out. I love playing sports. How can I make money doing this? And the shop was my first idea. That failed, but now doing what I'm doing, like, I'm just so grateful that I'm able to talk, and create content every day about what I love to talk about, not what I have to talk about, what I get to talk about, right? That's one thing that I always say is, like, we get to do whatever we're doing. Even if we're miserable, there are so many people who would rather be in our shoes, right? Trade spots with us. And I'm so grateful because I get to show up every day on social media. I get to connect with people like you, Nicholas, and, I get paid for it, which is so super cool. And I get to do it with my wife. So the business that I'm in, because it's 99% online, I mean, we still do happy hours. I still meet up with people and, I'll train with somebody at the gym and we'll get a workout in and talk marketing or strategy or something like that. But most of what I do is online. And now that I've got a 2-year-old boy, man, I saw him take his first steps. I heard him speak his first words. I get to see him every morning. I get to see him every night. I get to see him when I go down for my lunch break, right? Being able to have this type of freedom and make great money while I'm doing it is such a blessing. And again, I owe it all to my wife because she said yes before I did. She's the visionary. And now we get to work together. Now we have this amazing dynamic of being partners, not only in real life, but also in our business, which is super cool. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome, man. I love that. I love the story. Quick note, tell us a little bit about Crystal and Courage.
So Crystal and Courage, right? So Courage is my son. Um, again, she gets the credit. She thought of the name before I did. And again, I was a little skeptical. I was like, I don't know. I have a really unique name. So, you might see my name spelled out. It's Thiago, but it's pronounced Thiago. It's a Brazilian name. So it's been butchered my whole life. And I'm thinking, oh no, like we should just name him like, something cool like Troy or Maverick, right? But something like easy. And she's like, Courage. And I'm like, oh my goodness, my Brazilian family, can they even pronounce that? Like, here we go. We're going to roll it out. And when we first told my mom before he was born, we're like, we're going to name him Courage. And she's like, well, it takes courage to name your son Courage. And we're like, all right, here comes the onslaught, right? But I fell in love with the name, and he lives up to every bit of it because he's such a high energy, risk-taking, fun-loving, social little guy. And he looks so much like my wife. Like, I don't know how he has blonde hair and blue eyes and he's fair-skinned. I'm kind of the darker complected person, if you can't tell. But I say that, he gets my smarts, right? Because he's also really intelligent. And it's so much fun because we parent in a way that, first of all, thanks to personal growth and development, we are hyper aware of our language, and we are very attentive to the things that we say, the way that we speak to him, the way that others speak to him. And I think it's a big part why he's probably a little bit more advanced than the average 2-year-old with his language, which is really cool to see. And, it's fun sometimes. I could share some different stories there, but ultimately raising my son with my wife, because she's brilliant and she cares so much. And, she does such a great job. Like, she has a degree in psychology. She could have been a teacher. I'm so grateful. The formative years are so important. I think, between 0 and 7 is kind of the age where, we shape these human beings. And as much as we want to think that our parents don't have a deep, strong impact on who we are as individuals, good or bad, like it shapes our children for the rest of our lives. And so we've been very, not careful, because there's only so much you can do as a parent. You got to let your kids stumble. You got to let them get bumps and bruises. You got to let them figure it out. Like, we want an independent kid. We can't do everything for him. But she's been so amazing at, being a teacher for him and being really attentive to the language and the way that we speak to him. And, we're constantly, because they have this unique brainwave pattern right now where they take in everything, and they have like, it's like a photographic memory. So we're constantly just pouring information into him because he's asking for more and he wants to download it. And we know, it's an opportunity that we'll never get back. So I love parenting with her. She was an IFBB pro, so she's smoking hot. She's somebody that, challenged me in a lot of ways when I first met her, introduced me to personal growth and development. And, I think we'll get into it. I'll talk about how I lost my dad 11 years ago. And he was somebody that, really spoke positivity into me and, was my role model. And after losing him, I was lost for a lot of years. And when I met my wife, she kind of filled that role. She's somebody that, checks me on my shit, doesn't let, lack of integrity slide. And it makes me a better person. In addition to that, she sees beyond who I am and who I can be and pushes me in a way that I like it. Like you mentioned, pressure makes us more of who we are. And the pressure that I feel sometimes to be better, like, I thrive in that situation. And I'm so grateful for it.
Awesome, man. That's awesome. Obviously, you've been in the fitness modeling space and you've been in the men's physique space as well. And so, you and Crystal had your guys' chance to connect for a photo shoot through a mutual friend of yours and a photographer, Brett Seeley. And so I want to talk a little bit about the fitness piece, more so on kind of what are your thoughts now? You know, Thiago, obviously, you know, you've been well known and versed in the space of business and development when it comes to having that freedom, right? And being able to create an opportunity for people, not just as an actual platform to get involved and do something and become the own conductor and the own captain of their own ship in their life and to steer that, right? But you've also been very instrumental in helping people recognize that the best health, the best wealth out there is health. And you have a very strong dynamic approach to that. Now, not so much from a history standpoint, but in terms of now, you're a very avid believer in fasting and being able to help make sure that people are making smarter decisions when it comes to not just their health, but also their fitness. And so if you wouldn't mind, speak on that briefly.
Absolutely. So, shout out to Mr. Cupid, Brett Seeley. We did a photo shoot together, Crystal and I, and Brett was the main photographer there. Shout out to Doug too. He crushed it at that photo shoot. I got to meet Crystal, thanks to the fitness industry. I was getting ready to launch a business down in Brazil, and I needed some models, and I asked for a blonde with a big butt. Brett said you should talk to Crystal, and the rest is history, right? We did the photo shoot, and it's been an amazing ride ever since. The fitness industry I have so much gratitude for, because like you mentioned, I used to compete, and personally, like, I love the idea of pushing myself in the gym every day and just being a little bit better than I was yesterday. I think the number one thing, if people are looking for motivation, because you can watch a motivational video or you could listen to this podcast or hear somebody speak and it's like, wow, like, I got goosebumps, the hair is standing up, I'm so fired up, let's go. And then 2 days later, like, you're back to sitting on the couch, or you don't have the energy, or the excuses or outweighing your reasons to go continue doing what you were motivated for 2 days ago. Progress is really the number one motivator that I can encourage anybody to shoot up with in your veins. Like, if you want to, like, just pump your body full of energy and take it to the next level, it's just a matter of creating constant progress, right? A little bit every single day. And I know it's not sexy, it's not the huge transformation that you hear about, but that's something I've been doing for over 20 years. I've been lifting weights, and the fitness industry specifically, what it did for me was it taught me that, taught me about discipline. And I was able to build a ton of confidence in myself, in all my abilities, stemming from, the 1 hour a day working out. I think a lot of us can say, okay, I can do that, right? I can do that, 5-6 days a week. Like, that's something that, I got a good handle on. It's the other 23 hours of the day when you're preparing for a fitness competition that you are being, strict or rigid with your diet. You're being extremely disciplined, weighing and measuring all your food. And that type of confidence that I built from being able to say no to sweets. I have a strong sweet tooth. And when I say strong, like, me and Crumble Cookie, like, we're like this, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're best friends.
Sounds like my dad and Oreos. Shout out to dad and telling on him right now. But yeah.
Dude, I like cookies, right? Like, I love sweets. I love candy. I love baked goods. Like, I could go, and this food is made, to addictive levels. So, in our defense, right? Any other sweet tooths out there, it is made to be as addictive as possible by these big food companies. And that's a different conversation. But, I love sweets, and fitness competitions allowed me to choose, right? Because at the end of the day, you're your own boss. You are 100% responsible for all your successes and all your failures. It's not the government that's going to save us. It's not mom and dad that are going to save us. It's not on anybody but ourselves, right? As adults, like, we are 100% responsible. And what a fitness competition does is it says, hey, look, I've got this date, I've got this deadline, like, and I've got to do all these things every single day consistently for 12 weeks. And one of the toughest things you can do, which is going to build one of, mental resilience and, mental fitness, as I like to call it, is saying no the other 23 hours of the day to the temptation of the foods that are going to get you off track, right? The foods that are going to cause bloating, the foods that are going to cause you to gain weight or, increase your body fat percentages, all the different things that we know, right? Like, hey, I shouldn't have that if my goal is to be really lean. building that confidence by building that muscle is one of the biggest things that I got from competing, in addition to meeting my wife. And I'm thankful for that, because what it's done is it's inspired me to continue to not only live my best life and be a role model for my son, but also now I'm able to connect with people who, you know, want to get into the fitness world, like you, right, Nick? Like people that, you know, I mean, you're on another level. You're not like most people, but people that want to compete at your level, or people that want to just stick their foot in and get their foot wet. Because for a lot of people, what the fitness industry is it's a tool that I hope you come away with discipline and confidence in. And regardless of what the judges tell you, regardless of how you place, like all that, like secondary. But when you can make a promise to yourself and say, I'm going to compete and I'm going to give it my all. And it doesn't matter where you come in, right? Like, again, it doesn't matter what the judges say. If you can say, I'm going to do everything that my plan tells me to do, and I'm not going to cheat, and I'm going to follow through, and I'm going to actually do the show, like I'm not going to back out, right? When you start to keep these promises to yourself, that's when you build mental toughness that you can accomplish anything in the entire world. That's when you build the discipline that you say, hey, no matter what's happening out here, because life is going to continue to happen. And when you're, you know, carb depleted, or you're in your peak week and you're manipulating water and you're just cranky and hungry, and you've been, you know, again, resisting this temptation for the last 11 and a half weeks, and you just want to give in so bad, you're like, what's one cookie, right? Or what's one piece of pizza? But you say no, and you see it all the way through, and you keep that promise to yourself. There is nothing that feels better in the entire world than being able to do that. And again, it doesn't matter how you place, it doesn't matter how you look. It's that promise that you keep to yourself. And so that's the biggest thing that I got from the fitness industry. And what I love now is that with intermittent fasting, I'm able to really live a life of freedom. Because when I was competing, you know, there was a strict diet to follow, there was a rigid protocol, and there were workouts that I couldn't miss. I'm a dad now, you know, I'm a business owner, I'm extremely busy. And, you know, I don't know how some people still compete at this stage with kids. Like, wow, I have so much respect, because it would be that much harder to do. And now intermittent fasting plays such a big role to still provide the tools to stay lean, yet also the flexibility and the freedom, which I said in the beginning is so important to me to live my life. When I was competing, there was a summer where we were planning our wedding. It was in October. And that same summer, there were 6 or 7 other weddings that we went to. And we had 2 shows. We had a show in June. Beginning of June, and then July 4th show. And these were going to be our last 2 shows before, you know, we had our wedding coming up in October. There were probably 4 or 5 different weddings that we stepped out of. Like, this is a wedding. This is like a once in a lifetime event. We stepped out of to eat out of Tupperware, ate cold food with sriracha on it, because we were in a prep. We didn't drink. You know, I stood in these weddings, and like that experience for me was like, man, I love competing. I love the competition side of this. And I'm like, this is asking a lot. You know what I mean? This is taking me away from this experience. And intermittent fasting now, because I don't have to get on a stage, and I still want to look good, I still want to feel good, I still want my wife to think I'm, you know, attractive, right? I want to peel my shirt off and not be embarrassed. But I'm a dad too, you know, and I've got a business to run, and I've got so many other things going on that have also become extremely important to me. I mean, once you have kids, like there's nothing that comes ahead of your kids. And I didn't get it, and you don't get it until you really have kids. But intermittent fasting, again, just, it means less meal prep. It means I'm just not eating at certain times. So I'm able to really control my insulin, which at the end of the day, that's the number one factor, I believe, in what contributes to weight gain. You can focus on calories, and I get calories in, calories out, but like, that's not my focus. I focus on habits with my clients. I focus on habits for myself, and intermittent fasting has just made my life so much simpler and so much easier, because I still get to eat a lot of what I really enjoy, and I still have the flexibility and freedom while also looking lean, right? While also having, like, I'm still, you know, probably 8-7% body fat, you know, and this is with no effort. And, you know, I say no effort just because it's a habit that I've strengthened over time. It's not something I learned how to do overnight, but it's so freeing. Really, that's my favorite thing about it. It's so freeing. It's amazing.
Awesome, man. That's awesome. I know some people will have some questions about intermittent fasting, and so we'll definitely provide some information at the end, as well as show notes for people to go on there and connect, and they can find out more about fasting, the benefits of intermittent fasting, and the different types of fasts that are out there, and how that can definitely help with managing your health, obviously definitely assisting in weight loss, and just overall mediation with the different types of hormones out there. The number, I think it's like 58 different hormones in the human body that are essential. So wonderful stuff. This is all great, right, Thiago? So, if someone's hearing this, they're having this conversation, they're like, here's this guy who's got this wife, he's got this cool son and courage, and he's smart and healthy, and he's living with, he work from home, and he's living all this life, and people are saying, I can't relate to this guy. He's a good-looking guy. He's got all these great things in the work. Well, I think the important part of the conversation that I definitely want to dive into is that it didn't always start out that way, right? Like, obviously, I think, prior to us starting, we were having the conversation that when we see people, whether it's on social media, we see a person after a breakup, we see a person the night they win the Academy Award, we see a person living their best life, we see a person in real time. And so what happens is that we make an association, because that's how the human mind works, right? And we begin to, whether it's intentionally or arbitrarily, build a story around that. And so people see you, they see that line. When people see LeBron James, they see divinity and just like a guy who's always been 6'8", who's been like making bills, and he was meant and destined for the NBA, and a woman like Oprah who's just been like, straight cash flow, right? Like the girl with the hookup. And a lot of times we don't know that it's actually the story and the paradigm that you were talking about. A lot that's formed from those ages, as an early, toddler and walking into early childhood, and our experiences that begin to trigger those paradigms. And then as we go through life, adolescence, adulthood, early adulthood, so on and so forth, that ultimately shape us and allow us to be where we are. It isn't until we decide to look at ourselves as a garden, pull up the weeds of just the shit that has been completely convoluted. And anybody who's ever done gardening or any type of yard work understands, you didn't plant those weeds, but they're there. And they will completely saturate and take over in the same way that I think that happens in our day-to-day lives, right? And so, you have had a number of things that have allowed you to become the empowered, the successful businessman, the successful parent that you and your wife have become to your child, to have the ability to create a platform for your child, and also be a teacher as well as a student to people with health and wellness, and to teach them a very specific strategy, only because you've had to go through hell. There's a quote, and I'm going to probably butcher it, but I think it is from Nietzsche. It is from Nietzsche. It is. And Nietzsche said this quote that if you would, I'm gonna butcher it, but I think he said, if you will grow to the heavens, you must send your roots. If your tree would grow to heaven, then you must send its roots to hell. And I think that metaphor is so special because, as an individual, we see the success, but we don't see the journey. And I think people can definitely gravitate from, a story like yours, Thiago. So obviously, you pretty much lived in this country in Omaha, most of your life, but you were born in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. And what ended up happening is that from a very early age, you had a good example of a mother and father who obviously loved you. They gave you a good platform of support. So that was a good gift. And a lot of people didn't have that, right? But with that, you learned a lot from your father. So tell me a little bit first about your dad and what that relationship was like from a very early age. And then if you would, let's dive into your early years in school and what that was like for you and how you would, quote unquote, classify your identity.
It's a great question. I'm first and foremost just eternally grateful for the parents that, I have and I've had. My mom and dad loved each other. They were examples of a loving relationship. And, I'm lucky I came from a home where, they were married my entire life. And they were My dad was a little bit older when he, started this family, started our family. And I think for that reason, he was in a better place financially than I think a lot of parents who start off younger. And so I'm grateful for really the life that I've been blessed with every single day. And as much as all that's true for me, kind of the flip side of that is, my mom comes from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And so I was born in Brazil, and her side of the family, extremely poor. Most of them, she grew up without, constant or consistent running water. She grew up, with her family trying to figure out how to keep the lights on every single day. And having kind of like both sides and seeing both sides from a young age really shaped me. And I think really for me, I'll be honest, like just shows the type of opportunity that we have here in the United States compared to other countries. Because had we not moved here to the US and stayed in Brazil, life would have been much harder. And the fact that my dad went down there, met my mom, brought me back as a awesome permanent souvenir. He was down there on a business trip, and then I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm grateful for that experience. Anytime I go down to Brazil, and I go down there with my blonde wife, as soon as we get back, I'm almost like kissing the ground, like, wow, this is just so amazing what we have here and the opportunity. And, I've seen two very different worlds. So, my dad and my mother, kind of that yin yang, shaped me in a lot of ways. And specifically, my dad was always, preaching words of positivity, speaking life into me. And at the same time, he really held me accountable to my word. The one thing he always mentioned, above all else, was being honest and being your word. And I even have a tattoo on my wrist that looks like, a steel cable, because he talked about the more bands of character that you have, these different elements that make up character, the stronger of a human being that you are. And one of the big ones was always honesty and integrity. He always talked about that. I have another tattoo that my dad said growing up: effort equals results. And it's because he always talked to me and said, Thiago, like, you live here in the US, you have every opportunity available to you, right? Like you can go as high as you want to go. The only thing that's ever going to hold you back is yourself, right? Like drugs and alcohol, hanging out with the wrong people, getting in trouble, doing dumb stuff is going to be what holds you back. It's not going to be, any lack of capacities or anything like that. And so he was always pushing me and, uplifting. And he was this role model that really spoke these words of encouragement. And I'm so grateful for that, because I saw how that shaped me. My wife came from a very different house. Her parents were extremely young when they got married. They had 3 kids by the time her mom was 19, lived in a trailer at one point. And so 2 very different backgrounds. And when we're, looking at our childhood, and again, they did the best that they could. All parents, we always do the best that we can. Sometimes we're just in different circumstances. And so, what we've seen from both of our experiences as children growing up, how we want to raise our son, is that this has a direct influence on who we are and how we speak, right? Our reality that we see is based on our beliefs and our interpretation of what we believe we're seeing. Like we create what we see based on what we think we see, which is so rad. That's all proven with science. But what's really cool about that is like we get to create what's out here based on what we say, right? Based on who we say we are and then how we show up. And my dad always spoke positivity into my life and was the same person that, checked me, right? Would not let me, he was the disciplinarian. I remember one summer I got in trouble for having a big party out at this cabin that we had out on this river, and they didn't know it. And I got caught. I was grounded for the whole summer. I was constantly getting in trouble for something, right? Like I've got this rebellious spirit. I've got all these tattoos on me, like from my dad and what he said. And the first tattoo that I ever got says "one judge" on my ribs. And it's because I was so tired of my dad telling me what to do and judging me. I was like, God's my only judge. Doesn't matter what you say. Like that's my rebellious spirit that I had growing up with my dad. And, I'll be honest, I took it for granted. I took him for granted because he prioritized his business, he prioritized his family, he prioritized so many things before he prioritized his health. And when I was 23 years old, he passed away. He was only 65. He had type 2 diabetes. He was obese. He was over 300 pounds. He's about my height, maybe 6 foot. I'm like 5'11". He had sleep apnea. So, he hooked up an oxygen machine to his face at night so he could breathe. He also had, countless prescription drugs that he took every day. I don't know how many different pills he was popping, insulin injections. And the last year or two of his life, like, it was so heartbreaking to see this strong role model of mine become the person that I had to tie his shoes and I had to button his shirts. He couldn't even dress himself properly because of the diabetes. He'd gotten so bad, he was losing all the sensation in his fingers and his toes. And if you don't know anything about diabetes, it's the number one leading cause of amputations in the US because, you start to lose, you get nerve damage in your extremities, right? From all the inflammation, from, the sugar and the constant pumping of insulin in your body. And so at 23 years old, my dad passes away. He doesn't get to meet my wife. He doesn't see me graduate from college. He doesn't get to meet my son. And all these big moments in life that I would just do anything to be able to share with him, he's not here for. And it breaks my heart that I can't share these moments with him. But what I learned in that experience, seeing his lifestyle and seeing that we always had Coca-Colas in the fridge, right? We were always eating fast food growing up all the time, like probably 4 or 5 days a week. We'd be eating some kind of fast food, whether it was Burger King breakfast or McDonald's dinner. This lifestyle that we lived where, we had, I can't believe it's not butter at our house all the time, without getting technical, like that's fake shit, right? It's constantly just fake shit we're putting into our bodies that we're not able to process and metabolize. It's nutrientless and it just wreaks havoc on our hormones, and it killed him. I mean, it literally killed my dad, and I was only 23. So I miss all these life moments with him. And what ends up happening is, I've got this rebellious nature, like I told you, with my dad. As much as I respected him and I knew he was, an amazing guy, like, I think you could probably relate. Like, your parents tell you stuff, you got to figure it out on your own. You know what I mean? Like, as much as mom and dad are trying to like lead the way.
That's less morbid,
Yeah,
right? Right.
and as
Yeah.
kids, we think we
Yeah.
know it all. We think like, oh yeah, whatever. Hey, that worked for you 50 years ago or whatever, right?
Right.
And now I'm a dad. Oh my God, I probably got the worst karma coming my way. But all of these things that I wish so badly I had more time with him. He passed away. I've got this rebellious spirit, and I got mixed up, with drugs and alcohol. Most of my 20s, he passed away when I was 23. I started drinking to the point where I was blacking out multiple nights a week, every week, right? I was using drugs, right? I was partying a lot. It started in college. Honestly, it started in high school a little bit, smoking pot, right? And then continued in college. Then he passes away. And throughout most of my 20s, I'm living this purposeless, selfish lifestyle where all I'm concerned about are chicks and parties. That's it. Like, that's what I was after. And, on the outside looking at me, you think, okay, here's a kid who comes from a good family. He's got a 6-pack, because I was still fit. I still went to the gym, probably just to look good, to be honest. I was a single guy, right? Like, but on the inside, I was pouring toxins into my body. On the inside, my mindset was just wrecked. I didn't have the person in my life anymore that was like, dude, wake up. Like, you've got more to you than just getting blacked out and partying. Like, there's more in your life, and you're risking everything for these dumb decisions. I got arrested in college for being drunk in public. And I ended up being on probation at a university, transferred home because I was just partying so much. And, he was trying to be there for me, but then when he passed away, like, there was just nobody there that could really keep me in line. And it really, I mean, I don't know, I look back and I don't regret it because it made me who I am. But at the same time, I wonder, like, what would things be like if he hadn't passed away? Like, how could my life look now if my dad was there? And, until I met my wife and she introduced me to personal growth and development, I lived this lifestyle and I was lost. and I didn't have reason to show up powerfully or, be the person that I am today. And so I just went through the motions. I was kind of like a zombie, just living life. And, it was, I don't know. It was hard in a lot of ways because I think I was just suppressing a lot of emotions that, I didn't talk to people about. And when I met my wife, like I just felt like, she's somebody who I really respected, somebody who I looked up to and admired. And when, we went through this seminar, she introduced me to this seminar called the Landmark Forum. They constantly challenged me to get real and get in the game and, essentially share your skeletons with the people that you really love. And I was so scared to do that. I was so scared, but I did it. And, it was the greatest gift that I've ever gotten because she accepted me for all that I am and all that I'm not. And she said, there's nothing that you can say that changes how I feel about you. And it was in that moment that I was like, wow, it doesn't matter who I've been or what I've done. I can still be loved. I'm not broken. I'm not, I felt like I was damaged. And I constantly told this story of being this 40-year-old guy with, this 40-year-old bachelor with 20-year-old girlfriends because it sounded good and it looked good on the surface. Like, oh, that's his choice. That's who he wants to be. Oh man, what a life, right? Sounds cool. Freedom, no attachments. But really what it was is it was a mask for somebody who felt like he didn't deserve to be loved. And I didn't deserve love because of the choices that I had made in my 20s, being reckless, drinking, partying, hurting other people. And, I shared these things with her and I thought she was going to leave me. I'd already bought the ring. I was going to propose, and I was like, hey, like she's got to just know who I really am. And it was the scariest thing in the world. Like I'm telling you, like sleepless nights, heart racing, sweaty palms, like, oh my God, do it, don't do it. Oh my God, do it, don't do it. Tell her, don't tell her. And when I did and she accepted me, man, just that space of being vulnerable and really being myself with somebody, like at that point, like, I knew number one, I had my ride or die. Number two, that I'm not my past. I don't have to identify with these mistakes that I've made. And I can continue to grow and be somebody different if I own it, if I take responsibility for it first. And then if I start to say something different, if I start to say, hey, look, I'm not the guy who drinks and parties anymore. And I had to tell my friends, I had to cut people off. People cut me off, truthfully. Like that's part of it. We always say like, you got to cut people off, right? That don't challenge you or force you to level up. I got cut off from people that were like, they're like, oh, you're not that guy anymore. Yeah, right. Oh, really? Come on, dude. You're not who you say you are now. Like this is a facade. All these Facebook lives and you talking about whatever and being this positive guy. Yeah, right. We were just partying the other week, right? And I'm like, that's not me anymore. I don't go to the strip club anymore. I don't do that stuff. And you tell certain groups of friends and people one time, cool. Like you got to tell them over and over again. And that's the part of shifting your identity and becoming somebody new is you got to do it over and over again until you start to believe you're different. If you're trying to quit cigarettes, for example, right? And you throw one pack away, you're kind of like, okay, I'm quitting. Right. But like once you've gone 2, 3, 4, 5 years of not smoking, or now you have this confidence in yourself that you're not a smoker, this identity shift versus I'm somebody who's quitting smoking. It takes repetitions to get to that level. And I had to do that in my own life with my past, who I was, how I showed up on social media. I mean, I'm just grateful for her. I'm grateful for the growth and development because that for me was a springboard that woke me up. It woke me up from this zombie lifestyle that I was living, which was just party, 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 party. Don't really care. Not going to get deep with anybody. Not going to really share my true self with anybody. Never going to get married. Not for me. Why? Because I'm going to be a 40-year-old guy with 20-year-old girlfriends. Right. And that's what I was telling people. But inside I was like, I'm not lovable. And that conversation, thanks to personal growth, thanks to being terrified and still having the courage to do it, and then having somebody on the other side that accepted me, changed my life.
I think that's great, man. I think it's great. Thank you so much for the vulnerability and for sharing so much about the history of, losing your dad. obviously the trauma that surrounds and everything that really came with that in the 20s, and how you were able to slowly move through that and work through that. And so, if it's okay with you, I'd like to kind of circle back and move even a little bit earlier in life. Now, obviously you touched on, college being the first time where you really started to experiment, but I think this even started a lot sooner from high school, and even where a lot of, we as all people struggle, right? We struggle with this identity because we go through, we want acceptance. I think that happens at an even early age. I think it could be wrong, but I think it's like the Pavlovian psychosocial stages of development, or it might be Eric Erickson. And so you have these psychologists who talk about these different things, and from a very early age, what are the social ramifications and the cues that go along with being able to integrate into society, whatever that is, other boys, other kids my age, kids over there playing airplane, right? And so, you naturally gravitated of that first experience that, didn't work out for you, and you experienced a very, form of trauma in and of itself at an early age. That really helped you cultivate the work ethic that you not only started as a whole in business, but really in health and wellness. And so talk to me about that and how that happened at you or for you at a very early age. And I think it was in Nebraska. I want to say this was third grade or second grade, but it was
I think it was third grade.
third grade.
Yeah.
And talk about first your identity at that point in life, and how, people would have classified you, how you would even have classified yourself. And then ultimately, what was the event and what was the impact of those events?
Yeah. So in elementary school, I identified myself as kind of like a chubby nerd, kind of a dork, probably even more than a nerd, because like I didn't see myself as being a whiz in any one area or anything like that. But like I was, a little heavier set. I wasn't like obese, but like I definitely carried, some baby weight into third grade or whatever. And um, there was a girl, right? And backtrack a little bit then, or let me go back. I constantly wanted to fit in. Like I grew up in a city, not a big, not a huge city. Omaha has grown, but at the time, like it wasn't, the Omaha that it is today. And I think most people think of Omaha, Nebraska as just cornfields, and yeah, there's cornfields and stuff, but like, it's a good little metro hub. But I was known in my town as the kid who, had a really nice house, and I lived in Harvey Oaks. So the neighborhood was actually named after my family. And so badly, I wanted to fit in, but constantly, because of my name and who I was, like I wasn't like the other kids. And it wasn't like we were insanely wealthy. We weren't by any means, but we lived in the neighborhood that was named after my dad's grandfather, or my dad's father. And so as much as I wanted to fit in and just be one of the boys or be one of the kids, like I was the kid who lived over there in the house in the neighborhood that everybody knew about, right? The house that was bigger than the other kids. And so I got picked on for that. I got made fun of for that. I got pushed out of circles for that and bullied for that. And more than anything, I wanted to fit in. I mean, I tried to get the bowl cut haircut back in elementary school that all my friends had, that, my dad hated, but I had to have it. I had to have it so bad that I went behind his back and had it cut, and got into a huge fight with my parents. But, for the day that I had it, before my parents cut my hair back to how it was, I had the cool bowl cut. I wore Jinko jeans. I wanted to be a skater like my friends. I wanted to go hang out at my friends' houses and do the things that they were doing. And, I got picked on for not being like them, and for having a different last name, and for looking different. And, I got to a point where like I just wanted to fit in so bad. And there was this girl named Alicia, and she was my crush at the time. And the kid who was most popular, his name was Matt. This was also his crush. I believe this is my perception, right? So this is reality.
Right, your side of the story.
Exactly, which I've heard his side, and he sees it a little differently. It was funny to like talk about later on, but we're cool now. But we were both wanting the attention of the same girl. And I felt like I had to really stand out. He was popular, like he already had our attention. I had to be the class clown. I had to, make her laugh. And those were my skills at the time. That's how I stood out, because I wasn't the best looking kid by any means. I was not the most popular kid by any means. In fact, again, I got made fun of, just for my last name, for things I couldn't even control. Right. And we got in a fight over this girl, me and Matt. And I remember it was a cold day out on the playground, third grade, and we're out on the blacktop. And I'm wearing my Dallas Cowboys starter jacket. If you can think back to, the 90s, the early 90s, we all had those starter jackets, those pullovers with the pocket in the front. I had my Cowboys one. I've been a Cowboys fan forever. And, that's what I'm wearing. We're standing across from each other. I don't know exactly what was said, but we're about to throw down, and we're third graders, right? Kids probably at that age don't really know how to fight. At least I didn't know how to fight. And I imagine I can see all the other kids from our grade standing in a line watching me and Matt standing over here in the blacktop. And this fight lasted one punch. Matt, he punched me in the ear, and I immediately started crying. I started bawling my eyes out. It was so cold that day. I got punched in the ear and it hurt so bad. If you've ever been hit in the nose or the ear, especially when it's cold, it just hurts, right? Go with me here. Tell me it hurts really bad. Make me feel better. But I got punched in the ear.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks.
Totally.
I appreciate it. I need that.
I got you, buddy. I got you. Don't you worry.
Yeah, I started crying really hard, not because I was soft, but because it was really cold out and I got punched in the ear and immediately was just humiliated. The fight was over. I didn't even throw a punch and I lost. And this was for Alicia's heart. And this is also in front of all the kids who I desperately wanted so bad to fit in with. And I wanted their respect and I wanted their admiration. And I wanted to look good, right? As human beings, we all want to look good, whether you admit it or not, it's in you. And it was shattered. And it was in that moment that, I made a decision hey, I've got to find different ways to stand out. I've got to do something different because, number one, fighting, I'm no good at that, right? So I'm not a fighter now. And I think it was also in that moment that now that we're talking about this out loud, I think I made this decision that hey, look, I don't approach girls. I don't go after girls. Not me anymore. Instead of going after girls, I'm going to have them come after me. And, third grade, I didn't start lifting weights or anything, but I started to excel in athletics out on the playground. I mean, it's third grade, right? So it's not like it was a big deal. But in middle school, I got a personal trainer and I started working out, right? And I started to build this confidence through my physical fitness to where, high school comes around and in Nebraska, what does everybody do? We play football. Football is what we have. It competes with Oklahoma and Texas and some of these big football states that's what we do. And so, that's what I wanted to do so badly, but I didn't start playing football until a couple of years after many of my friends had already been playing Pee Wee and many of my friends had already had this, experience and kind of were developing their skills in this area. I was just like a backyard football player. Right. And so I'm behind the eight ball with a lot of my friends. And now we're going into high school. And this is a very competitive program that we had. We were the top school in the top class in Nebraska perennially, year after year. And so we were producing a lot of really high quality players that went on to play at big universities. And so I wanted to make the team, but I was definitely not the biggest dude. I was definitely not the fastest dude. I was not the strongest. And so I couldn't jump the highest. I was lacking some of these physical tools. I was also behind the eight ball. And so at this same moment in middle school, the coaches wanted us to start coming in and lifting weights and show that we were willing to work and put in the effort to make the team, right? And I got a tattoo, like I said, a tattoo on my arm that my dad always said, effort equals results. And so I said, oh, here's my path. Here's how I'm going to become a football player on this team. I started lifting weights and I showed up consistently every day. And every day that I showed up, I pushed myself as hard as I could. I took no days off. And this was my opportunity to make something of myself. I wasn't given the talent that other kids had. I didn't start as early as some of these other kids had, but I could work hard, and I did. And it was, my sophomore year, I started getting recognized. I started playing junior varsity, and then I was starting as a junior, and I started on our Class A state football championship team, all 13 games. Definitely wasn't the best player on the team, not by any means. But by the time I was done, I was getting looked at by some smaller schools, and I had worked my way into a position where, I was regarded as one of the cool kids in high school. I had the letter jacket. I was regarded as, somebody who, in the eyes of my dad, like had worked to this level, to compete. The coaches, knew I was a competitor, and it all came from this decision to work hard, to put in effort and to really make my own way. And I'd say a lot of it stemmed back from the bowling, from the experience that I had where I got punched in the ear. And I'm like, look, I got to find a way to stand out. I got to take ownership for this. And for me, it was through my physical body. It was through my fitness that I was able to do that. And, I loved high school. I had such a great experience. And a lot of it, I'd say, even had the attention of girls and, was because of my physical body.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So, things are kind of looking up for you. And I think in so many ways, we talk about, or I think you had mentioned this in the beginning, it's not what happens to you, it's how you react and how you respond to that. And so having an event like this that was really traumatizing and very easily could push people one way, right? You chose to use that to fuel a very specific ambition. And that ambition led to a very specific actions that ultimately got you what you wanted. It got you that form of acceptance. It got you that recognition. It got you the identity, and then that outside tangibility that showed that you were worthy, right? Well, here comes the hard part. You catch a bad break your senior year, and that leads you into certain paths. So talk about finally going from, in your eyes, being a no attainer to being now an achiever and an attainer, and what ended up happening that began to change that entire dimension and your future for that matter.
Absolutely. I was a physical underdog. And you probably wouldn't say that looking at me, but like I worked my way consistently with discipline to get to where I got in high school. I started all 13 games as a junior. Like I said, I was starting to get looked at by some smaller schools, even attended some bigger camps. And 2 weeks into the senior year of the football season, I broke my collarbone in practice. Big pivotal point in my life. I look back even to this day and I'm like, gosh, if that didn't happen, where would I be? I still have dreams. I have dreams that I go back to high school and I come back and get to play my senior year. Like I like even this year I've had those dreams, right? And so it's in there for me on a subconscious level. And what happened when I broke my collarbone was, number one, the the doctors gave me, prescription painkillers, right? Hydrocodone, I think it was, or Percocet or something like that. And I also started smoking weed. A couple of my friends, all of a sudden, like I don't have these athletics. I just show up for practice every day and stand there. And, I've got more time on my hands. Before I spent so much time practicing and playing sports. If it wasn't basketball season, it was football season. If it wasn't football season, it was tennis, right? And so it was sport after sport after sport. But now I'm like, laid up, right? Broken collarbone, can't do anything. A friend of mine introduces me to weed. And, I became a habitual marijuana smoker at that point for a number of years. And rather than trying to play football at a smaller school after coming back from that injury, because that was still there for me, I'm like, okay, I could still do this, right? I had an opportunity to go to a big university in Arizona State and go down to, party capital USA. Beautiful, beautiful campus, a lot of beautiful women there. And, I was ready to get out of this home, get out of small town Omaha, Nebraska, and go do something radically different, right? Like my parents, my dad was really strict. I'm like, man, I got to go be free. I got to go be who I want to be.
Right.
And I went there and I kept partying, and that's where I got exposed to more drugs. And, like I mentioned, like that led up to me getting poor grades in college, That led up to me being on probation with the university. That led up to, the point where I was partying all the time. I wasn't going to class. I got arrested on campus for being intoxicated, and oh man, got put in handcuffs and escorted to a cop car in front of my whole dorm. Don't share that with a lot of people, but that happened, and it was it was hard for a lot of reasons, but I just kept wanting to have fun. I kept wanting to live that life until it got to a point where my dad was like, dude, you're not showing up. Like, you're not doing what you're supposed to. Like, who are you? And, he brought me home to where I transferred out of that university. I started at a different university at Creighton, and I ended up completing school there after 5 years. But, um, you know, that's, that's really like that point in high school when I broke my collarbone and I had kind of an identity shift and like, hey, look, I'm this athlete that's worked his way here and now I can't be that person. Like, who am I now? And oh, by the way, here's marijuana. And all of a sudden, like, oh, now I'm a stoner. Right. And I was that way for a number of years, for a long time. And, you know, it just uh, it was a decision that changed my life. Number one, how to respond to that injury. I mean, I believe in any situation, there are infinite possibilities as to what could happen. I think oftentimes we fall into this game called the fool's choice, which is like, oh, yeah, it's either this or that. Oh, they're either going to say yes or they're going to say no. No. Oh, yeah, you could have either started smoking weed or you could have, fought back and become an even better jock. No, there's probably like infinite different things that could have happened.
Right.
Right. And that was the one that I chose. I believe, everything happens to us for a reason. And, I look back and I'm like, man, where would I be now? Like the butterfly effect. If I hadn't broken my collarbone, like would I have gone to a big university? Would I have continued to play football? Who knows? Right. But at the end of the day, like I know I am where I am and I'm supposed to be here. And I'm so grateful because I might not have my wife. I might not have my son. I might not get to be doing what I'm doing now. And I learned a lot. I'm not a stoner anymore. I don't use drugs. I don't party the way that I used to. Like I'll still have drinks, with friends or whatever, but like, I don't live that lifestyle. And I think for me, what it did was it led me down a path to where I almost, like you said, like the roots down to hell before you can, spread your branches or, up in heaven. I had to have this kind of empty party life experience to really appreciate what I have now and to also, get to a space where I thought I was broken to where I had to be courageous enough because it was so scary to share myself with somebody who accepted me for all that I am and all that I'm not. And I'm so grateful because I have everything for it. It was my own version of, despair and losing my dad and, feeling kind of callous about it. And that's something I don't really mention publicly. I still feel guilt sometimes for, missing my dad, but also being grateful that I felt free in a sense, not having, the disciplinarian in my life, which is still kind of a messed up complex that I work through. But at the end of the day, all those experiences shaped me. I'm grateful for all of it. I wouldn't go back and change any of it because I'm right where I am thanks to all those things. And, I would just say to the person who's watching and, you're in a bad spot or you're down right now, seasons. Life is made up of seasons. And as much as something feels permanent, I had suicidal thoughts in middle school. Just the arguments I got into with my dad. And I had, moments where I was just so sad and so broken up. I didn't even go to my senior prom, because of my broken collarbone. I had these different moments that where, I've just been so down, and they were seasons, they were moments in time. And the life that I get to live now is in big thanks to who I was then and what I learned from that and how I've responded to it. Because now I get to share my story and I get to talk about it vulnerably. It's kind of hard to share some of this and authentically. And, hopefully it makes a difference for whoever's watching.
I like what you said about the fact that you have the opportunity to live, the way you have now because you've foregone those experiences, and that those are seasons, right? I think that's the terminology you use. And when we think about seasons, we think about the change of seasons, right? From winter to spring, spring to summer, and then obviously summer to fall. And I think that what becomes so true is that you would tell somebody, yeah, if it's, the leaves are falling, the snow is going to come. And if the snow stops coming and you start to see things sprout and bloom, that means there's going to have these intense days of, good rays and high heat and thunderstorms. And I think that sounds it's so simple to understand in and of itself. When we use the analogy for how life becomes seasons, right? Where we have these moments because of how it's wired, maybe just fight or flight, because again, that's like survival and how we've expanded and how we've been able to use and leverage the nervous system to make sure that we protect ourselves, the autonomic nervous system in particular. But when we hit fight or flight for anything, especially in the modern day, whether you're trying to, provide for yourself, you're trying to measure or calibrate yourself for title, you're trying to, get in the best shape of your life, you're trying to win competition, you're trying to earn a job, you want to level up your life, your income, you want to be able to travel. Those all come with a price. And the price, in some way or form, is going to make you go through struggle, which is going to elicit that fight or flight. I think when that happens, we seem to go through the dumps, and then obviously the worse, the harder the circumstance or the caveat, the caveat is just that, we feel like that's permanent. My life is over. I went through this breakup. I'm heartbroken. And that becomes the permanent story, right? Like that becomes the new narrative of your life. Your self-worth is summarized in a matter of minutes when you get the call or the email that says you didn't get the job, right? And so how are you somebody who's able to look at something that I think more people struggle with than not? And a lot of that has been ingrained in not just the culture here in the States, but I think all over. Your aptitude and your, worthiness is based on what you achieve or where you are, your title, or who you kick it with, right? And you've been able to transcend that in some of the darkest of times prior to you becoming the man that you are. So how were you able to do that in such a point that is where you're in the thick of it? How are you able to recognize that, this is a season, but this ultimately doesn't define, like you said, who you are or what you're about?
While I was in it, I don't think I recognized it, and I think there were a lot of people that maybe on the outside looking in, they were concerned, they saw how much I was partying. They saw this lifestyle that I was living, and they're like, is he okay? And, when I'm in it, I'm like, oh, really? Like, come on. Like, I'm just having fun. It's just, it's just a good time. And probably at any given point, like I could have killed myself, doing something stupid. And so while I was in it, I didn't recognize it, but hindsight's 2020. When I met Crystal around 27, 28, I forget what year it was. From pretty much 18 on, drugs and partying consistently, 18 to 28, 10 years of my life. It's incredible saying that. And meeting Crystal, all of a sudden somebody's telling me like, hey, look, like you've got more to live for. You're a great human being. I love you. Somebody sees something in me, like what my dad saw in me. Like my wife starts, my girlfriend at the time starts saying these things to me. We just really hit it off and we had this amazing chemistry. And because she had gone through some of her own personal growth prior to me, she had gone through the same landmark course, the forum, prior to me. She had her own breakthroughs. And it was through those breakthroughs that she was able to share, hey, this is what happened for me. And I think for you, like I can't tell you exactly what you're going to get out of it, but there's something for you on the other side. And when I went to this, program, and I started to really understand I'm responsible for everything, first and foremost, like all my successes, all my failures, I'm the common denominator. right? Like I'm choosing that. Like if there's something in your life that you don't like, it's a tough pill to swallow, but you're choosing it. I really believe that we choose these things for different reasons. And, if we don't heal our past traumas, if we don't address them, if we don't talk about them, like what I shared with my wife, what I thought she was going to leave me over. And I said, this is me. This is what I've done. This is the man you're going to marry. And I was terrified of that. But when I had the courage to address those things and really share them with somebody intimately and authentically, like not sugarcoating any of that shit, like just telling her what's up. Because she had been through it, she was compassionate. She was empathetic. She was somebody that still loved me and understood, that it was very hard for me to have the courage to admit and acknowledge those things. And when I did that, when I started to speak them versus just suppressing them, and we got into dialogue about it, just versus what we tell ourselves, because here's what happens. Something bad happens and we say, oh, I'm a piece of shit, or, oh, I'm stupid, or I suck. And we own it like it's us, not like it happened, not like it was something that occurred in our lives, but we own it like, oh, I am stupid. This is why this happened to me. And we own it with such strong, deep emotion that it creates trauma. And when we identify that or with that in this way, I'm stupid, stupid shows up everywhere in our life.
Mm-hmm.
Because as human beings, like we don't live in an irrational world. All right. Like if I keep saying the sky is blue, but it's really pink, like something feels wrong, like the incongruence there. So if we start to say, I'm stupid and really believe it, we're going to find every bit of evidence in the world that we are this way. And so in this personal growth program, I started to challenge the things that I was saying. What I used to say about myself, I started to look at from a different lens, like, oh, is this real? Or did I say that when I was 6 years old, or when I got beat up in third grade, or when I broke my collarbone and I was 18? And I created these beliefs, these neural pathways, like these are, these fire in our brain and tell us that these things are true. And then our behavior is shaped from that. And so like these patterns of behavior that keep showing up, these self-sabotaging ways of being, these, put down or negative conversations that we have, they keep showing up based on who I say I am, right? And now I'm challenging all those things in personal growth. I've got somebody else that's backing me up and supporting me, saying, no, you're this person, not the person you keep saying you are, right? That combination, along with personal responsibility, woke me up. And it said, wait a minute, I don't have to keep doing this. I don't have to be who I think I've always been, or who I feel like I deserve to be. Like I deserve to be somebody who's not living up to their potential. Like because I don't deserve being up here, right? Because I've done all this stuff. And because I've done all this stuff, I'm a bad person, right? And
Would
I
you
identify that.
would you say, Thiago, that for a person to really get out of a funk, whether it's more elective and minor, meaning the process and how they feel down about themselves, or they don't have that confidence, right? Or they feel responsible, or that they're upset. Let's say that's a short period of time versus somebody who's been maybe depressed their whole life, maybe they're even medicated. Either one and everything in between, would you say that one's more important to definitely focus on a self-development chasm and discipline ultimately to get in front of their life? Or would you say that it's pretty consistent across the board that wherever you are at a stage in your life, if you want better for yourself, you would definitely need self-development?
Well, I can speak for myself because I'm not, a medical professional. I'm not a clinical psychologist or anything like that. And so if you've experienced any, chronic or long duration period of time where you're down and you're medicated, like definitely seek, the guidance of a professional. I can speak for myself and say that, number one, like changing your physiology changes the way that you feel and your emotions, right? Like they've connected so much of what they've recently discovered in gut health being linked to depression, being linked to mood, being linked to, brain health, right? Like now there's this whole new, there's like a third brain they're talking about. They're talking about we've got like our heart brain, we've got like our brain, and now we've got like a gut brain, right? Like, and they're uncovering like I've got goosebumps all over my body. I love reading about this stuff and I can't even begin to really explain it. I'm going to try and do my best to some extent here, but like in essence, everything's connected. And if you want to start shifting the way that you feel, like emotionally, I'd say it's a couple parts. Number one, changing your physiology, which is starting to take care of your body, can really make a big difference because, had I still been doing all those drugs and then tapped into personal development, I don't think it would have worked the same way.
I
Like I
agree.
chose, hey, I chose like, okay, like I'm done doing these drugs and I'm starting to read these books and starting to like, learn about, neural pathways in the brain and my subconscious mind and all this stuff and how important language is. And like, hey, that I've had these traumas and just because they happened in my life doesn't mean I am that person. Like I can be somebody new right now, or even a second from now, or even 10 seconds from now, if I want to be. Like I have that power. But if I was still using a bunch of drugs, I don't know if it would have worked, right? So it was at the same time that like I detoxed my body and I said, okay, I'm going to start taking care of myself physically and I'm going to start taking care of myself mentally, that then my emotional side was able to really flourish. Like I've been so much more of an outgoing person. And I think people would have looked at me and been like, oh, you've always been outgoing. But like, no, you didn't really know me. I didn't let you in. I wasn't the person that you hear now. You
Right.
got this version of me that
Brief
I kept to
summary on
about,
social media, just kind of the highlights, right?
right. Like
Right.
I'm keeping you here because number one, like you don't deserve to know me because I'm not good enough for you to get to know the real me. So we're going to stay about this far apart. Right. And so that's the version most people got of me. And plus I was always fucked up. Like that's not the real version of anybody if they're constantly messed up. So, stopping the drug use, stopping the partying, and then getting into personal development, like changing the physiology was, one of the, I would consider the low hanging fruit for a lot of us, because the hard work is going back to these times in our lives and saying like, okay, this thing happened. This made me feel like this. I decided in that moment that I would protect myself by becoming this identity, right? Like, for example, I got punched in the ear, right? It made me feel humiliated. Like I'm not good enough. Like
Right.
I have no self-worth. And then because of that, I create this identity that is, look at me, I look great on the outside because I don't need you, because I got it made, because I don't need anybody, right? That's what I created from that. And unless we go back and really look at, okay, what happened? And dude, you're not that person. Like you're not the third grader who says you got to be this way. You can be anybody you want to be. You just start being different. That's the harder work because number one, we don't want to feel these emotions. We don't want to go back to these times of humiliation. Like these are emotions we avoid as human beings. We don't like it. Our fight or flight says, oh, that's uncomfortable. I don't like it. No, 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 no. Let's not talk about it. Let's not go
Right.
there.
Right.
Let's forget about it. I mean, we even like totally black these things out. Like the more I've started to open up this can of worms, like I'm finding like all kinds of other worms. And so it's kind of hard work in a sense. It's not the easy work, but it's the work that really leads to true transformation and true change in who you are and your identity. Like you want an identity shift, if you want different results, you've got to become a different person. You don't just start doing different things, but you become a different person. And it's the person who then will consistently do the different things that lead to the different results. But you first got to see yourself differently. And if you don't, you've got no chance, right? That's why so many people lose a bunch of weight and they gain it right back. That's why so many people get yo-yo results and it's not sustained. So you've got to see yourself as somebody different to create something different. And then you'll actually start to consistently do what it takes to be different. It's kind of a cool process, but I'm learning so much about that. And, I'd say first and foremost, to answer your question, like, start working on taking care of your physical health, start exercising, right? As simple as that sounds, even 30 minutes of walking a day makes a huge difference. Huge difference. I work with a lot of clients who are like, I don't want to diet and I don't want to exercise to lose weight. And I kind of scratch my head, but I'm like, okay, I like the challenge. Let's at least start walking and let's start intermittent fasting, right? Because we want to start to work with our body's hormones so that we start to feel good, because all of our, serotonin, dopamine, All these
Right.
hormones that we produce that make us feel good or make us feel bad, the endorphins are hormones. And if our food is totally throwing everything out of whack, which it does, you're constantly eating refined foods and a lot of, processed food and sugar and stuff, it'll actually totally suppress your serotonin, which can lead to depression. I mean, just eating food can do that, right? So then you mix in the stressors of the world, right? We can't control all that, but like at least let's start to control our physiology, control our health. You start to do those things first, then, add into that the books that you read, the people you surround yourself with, what you're consuming here, who you're watching on social media. All this stuff has an influence on you, and then you'll start to believe, wow, I can actually do this, and it takes, consistency in doing what you said you're going to do, being who you said you're going to be, right? One of my favorite quotes from Gandhi is, happiness is when what you say, think, and do are in alignment. When you want to be happy, you don't have to be the bajillionaire. You don't have to have it all.
They think and do are all in a line. Wow.
That's happiness.
That's a great one. That's a great one.
So you can be on the path and be happy without having the result. And that's what's really cool. I think a lot of people think once I get the result, I'll be happy. It's like, no, you can choose happiness, but like, trust me, like you don't have the shame and the regret and the guilt when you are thinking and saying and doing, when all those things are like this.
Listen, man, it's been amazing to sit here and to go over this information. Without doubt, it's inspiring. I have a couple other questions, but first and foremost, man, I definitely want to say thank you for coming up here and being so vulnerable about how you're able to use the tools that you're talking about. And what was that process like? Because there was a journey, there were multiple journeys, ultimately to get yourself from, dropping out of school and having to go back home into Creighton, having to, spend all of your 20s attached to something that you don't want, and even being a business owner, which is what you wanted, to finding out that you don't want to be a business owner in that way. And it's just a matter of development. It's a matter of going through the steps. It's a matter of cultivating those processes. So I thank you for that. I thank you for coming on the show and just being who you are, man. Is awesome.
Happy to share, man. Thanks for creating the space for me to feel safe, to be vulnerable. That's so important. And I think the more that we can start to become more empathetic and be better listeners, the more authenticity that we'll get. So I appreciate you for really being there in that way.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming, and you are very welcome. So the first question is, having the conversation about self-development, we heard, I think it was Jim Rohn say, you could fast forward a lifetime and download that in 10 days by reading a book. And so there's a lot of value because books are the sources of information. We use them in school, we use them in informal education, but ultimately it's the art of storytelling and being able to reciprocate value. So if you could pick just 5 must-read books, we had a conversation earlier about how big that list runs, and I'm right there with you. But if you could pick 5 complete books, that would be your suggestion for helping people get started, helping people get into the right state of mind, helping people keep the right state of mind, or even being able to help people with certain strategies, what would those 5 books be?
Okay, so first of all, I want to talk to the person who's sitting over there that, as soon as you brought up books, like they might have tuned this conversation out. Hey, I was you. I hated reading books. I read books all the way through all my years of school. Like I just read what I had to read and I got through it. And I felt like every page I read was murder. It felt like I was like squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. My mind was everywhere but in the page itself. So I got through it challengingly, begrudgingly, and I did it for school. I did it to get the grades. You know what? Now I get to read what I actually like to read and what I choose to read and what makes me learn and challenge me and feel better. And so, if you're somebody who hates books, first of all, there's Audible. You can listen, right? Audible is a great source to start to download this content without having to actually read a book. So if you're not a reader, totally cool. I feel you. I was that way. Then I heard the average CEO reads about 60 books a year. And I'm like, okay, there's a reason these guys are making, I think, like 100 times what the average person a year makes, but they're reading 60, books a year, and the average person doesn't even, read maybe one. So I'm like, okay, there's something there. I should start reading. But I started to read what I really like. So 5 books that I absolutely love that have had a huge impact on me. Number one is like Atomic Habits by James Clear. 95% of what we do, maybe more, is habits. We think we're making all these choices and going through life intentionally. Our habits are running the show. So if you start to change your habits, it'll change your life. Another book that I read, a little bit more recent, The Complete Guide to Fasting by Dr. Jason Fung and Jimmy Moore. Really cool book, takes intermittent fasting and all the complexity of it, it's actually quite simple, and puts it down into a really simple book that anybody can read. And so intermittent fasting has changed my life. It'll change yours if you give it a shot. That book makes it so simple to pick up and understand. A book that I read years ago when I started to, start to get more intentional with my health and fitness, and I wanted to start looking really good, honestly, when I wanted to start, getting into the competition scene, was Better Than Steroids. It's a book by Dr. Darren Willey. You heard that one?
This is the one that we talked about. Yeah, we're going to come back to. This is the one. I like that.
I couldn't think of it, but it's really cool because what he's telling you in that book is like, steroids produce certain results, but if you want to get better results than steroids, it's really a matter of nutrition. What you eat, when you eat it, and how much of it you eat in combination with your training, that'll give you amazing results. So that book really made a big difference for me. I could name a number, but I'm going to pick 2 more because I'm going to follow the rules, which is really hard for me to do as an entrepreneur. The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy. That's a book that I actually read recently. Really cool, getting into what he talks about as, he talks about, I think it's called, what do we call it? Like prayer psychology. I don't know if it's prayer psychology. It's prayer something. But it's how literally like what we speak and when we're talking about it, like specifically, if you lay down at night and you're ready to go to sleep, you're in a certain brainwave pattern to where your subconscious mind is more open to suggestion. So it's a great time to speak your affirmations. It's a great time to talk about what you're grateful for, right? Because it's in that mode or that time of day where you're in that theta brainwave pattern to where your subconscious mind, which is what actually runs your habits, you can talk to it without the filter of, oh, that's bullshit. If you start to say, I'm a millionaire, I'm a millionaire, I'm a millionaire, and that's why most affirmations don't work, is you say them and you've got this filter that says, that's not true. Look at where I'm at. I'm not a millionaire. That's crap, right? But if you speak to your theta brain waves in your subconscious mind, like when you're lying in bed and you're kind of in that drowsy state, you can start to plant those seeds and your brain will work on that while you sleep. That book talks a lot about not just that, but a lot of subconscious practices. And then another one that I absolutely love is from my personal mentor. I've been in his top earner mastermind group for the past 3 years. It's Ray and Jessica Higdon, and it's called Time, Money, Freedom. And so whether you're in network marketing or not, I know a lot of fitness professionals that have left the big gyms and they're trying to do their own thing. Or I've met a lot of people that are like, how do I make money doing something I really enjoy, right? The beauty is, it's 2021. The internet gives us so many tools and resources to be able to make money in what we're passionate about. This book lays out step by step exactly what to do to create more time, to create more money, and to have more freedom in your life. Like literally, it is action step by action step. Earlier, when you mentioned, how weeds grow in our garden and we didn't plant them there, the first chapter in this book talks about plucking your weeds. So like, it was funny when you said that. I was like, oh man, that's so cool. So those are 5. I could go on, but let's
5 books right there. We'll have those looped in the show notes. Thiago, obviously, man, I want to thank you so much again for being able to bring that list, and not just to give a list of, Atomic Habits, Time, Money, Freedom, the Power of the Subconscious Mind, but to really give an in-depth analysis as well as what people can look forward to and expect, and how they might be able to use those tools to actually construct, defragment, and actually build something that they want for their future. Because at the end of the day, man, I'm with you. I was not a reader. SparkNotes was amazing. I don't know if that's still around anymore, if people even know what SparkNotes was, but being
used them all through high school and college.
reading books and getting the art of storytelling has transformed the way that I see and the perspective and everything every day. But ultimately, it's definitely helped shift the entirety of every hat that I wear as a human being, as a man, and as a person, and as a student. So I thank you for that, man. Really quick, before I ask my last question, where can everybody connect with you and find out more about you, or maybe get into some conversations?
Awesome. Great question. I appreciate that. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Clubhouse. I got a YouTube channel. Across the board, for the most part, it's Thiago M. Harvey. So if you use the @ symbol, THIAGO, M Harvey, HARVEY. That's typically where you'll find me on any of those platforms. You can email me as well. I can always drop that link if you want to get in touch directly. Probably Facebook's the best way to get a hold of me right now. You'll get the quickest response there.
Awesome. Awesome, man. Thanks again for that. All right, last question. Are you ready?
Hit me.
I want you to imagine that for exactly 1 minute and 30 seconds, okay, 90 seconds in all, you have the world's attention. Boy, girl, old, young, sick, healthy, rich or poor, different races. Everybody is giving you their ears, their eyes, their heart, their attention. And you have 90 seconds to convey a message to these people. What would you say and why?
Listen, I've been totally lost and I've been blessed with so much. I'm eternally grateful for the person that I've become because I've been able to learn and grow from my hardships. And I'm telling you that no matter where you're at in life, everything happens for a reason. No matter how hard this season is that you're in right now, if you can ask yourself, what's the gift? What is the gift in this moment? What is the gift in my circumstance? What is the gift in this challenge? And you can take something from that, you can find gratitude in that, you're bulletproof. You're bulletproof if you can do that. You can accomplish anything you want in the entire world. I lost my dad at 23 years old. I got mixed up in drugs and alcohol. He was somebody that prioritized so many things, but he didn't prioritize his health. He was successful in many areas, but he didn't take care of himself. And because of that, I lost my number one person in life. He never met my wife. He wasn't at my wedding. He never met my son. And I miss him every single day. And I'm telling you, if you don't first take care of your health, if you don't make that a point, everything else is secondary. A man who has his health has 1,000 dreams. A man who doesn't has but only one. And so if you can make your health a priority, everything else will fall into place. You will be a better wife. You will be a better husband. You will be a better employee, employer, spouse, parent, brother, sister, whatever hat you wear. When you start to feel good, you can accomplish anything. So make that a point, figure out a formula that works for you, because at the end of the day, like, if you don't take care of that, there's nothing left after that.
Thiago, thanks, man, for that raw and very candid explanation. Great answer. I think this is definitely one for the masses. You guys, you heard it from the man himself. Health is a priority. You have heard from him in his testimony about where he has gone, where he is going, and most importantly, that you can overcome anything, no matter what the hand that you hold presents. And so I definitely urge you with the most conviction that I can actually say to go check out what Thiago does and to at least be a student, as he has devoted his life to becoming a student, because if anything, you can scratch the surface in your own life and begin to burrow into the ground. You will be covered in mud, but you will find your own treasure. This is Nicholas Natt with Nat Fitness signing off. And until next time, my friends, live healthy, live happy, be legendary. Bye-bye.